All right, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to the Dorm History Podcast. In another exciting week where we're going to cover a lot of your favorite topics all in one
Probably
week.
your most favorite topics.
Yeah. This week, luckily, is pretty chill.
They already know because they click, they see what the title of
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
They already know what's going on.
And luckily, it's pretty cool. This is a cool week, and we're excited to cover it. And we're excited to still have fans after this
I
episode.
hope so. I spent probably 30 minutes before this just trying to figure out how to be the least controversial possible. So we're going to do our best here.
Yep. So get excited for that.
Good.
With that being said, I got my phone on me today,
Okay.
which means that we will get to do today in history,
Yes.
this week in history.
Dude, I hope it's not. Well, my computer let me know yesterday or 2 days ago that it was Michelangelo's birthday. So hopefully that wasn't what you threw in there.
It's not.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
No. I threw in something I thought you might like a little bit.
Oh, good.
And maybe you'll even know once I say the year. So 161, I believe 80. It doesn't say anything different.
Maybe I could help out if you tell me what it is.
161 AD. Roman Emperor
Okay, it is AD.
Antonius Pius
Okay.
dies and is succeeded by co-emperors
I don't know, man.
Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In an unprecedented political arrangement in the Roman Empire.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius, big deal.
Yeah.
Stoicism from that
Mhm.
man.
A lot of writings. A lot of people look up to Marcus Aurelius.
Very, very smart guy.
Most people would look down to him because he's in the ground.
I guess if you're like in China or something, you look up to him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Another thing that I thought is one of my favorite events in all of history, actually, so I wanted to make sure it got some airtime as well today in history.
So
1530, King Henry VIII.
Okay.
You may remember this guy. His divorce request is denied by Pope Clement the Seventh.
Oh man.
I wonder if this will lead to anything.
I wonder if anything will happen after this.
For those of you who know, this is how the Church of England begins.
Leads to the deaths of many.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Also, he kills a lot of people because of this.
And just infinite religious conflict, basically. So,
Yeah. Just let a homie get divorced.
I wonder if anything would happen.
That's one of my favorite historical events for sure.
That's a good historical event. Both of
Yeah.
those. Those were great for this week in history.
So, yeah, there we go. So, with that, we're going to get right into today's topic. Luckily, it's a pretty chill topic, so we're excited to cover it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Islam today. And I feel very lucky because, well, let me tell you a story, actually.
Okay.
So, growing up, it was about this time. It was probably my junior year of high school because that was the last time that I played basketball really competitively because my senior year was COVID and got canceled. But this was, if you know, about this time is when COVID started in 2020. So that's 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, we are playing in the playoffs. And me and my center, he was one of my best friends too. We probably played the most minutes on the team. So we were running a lot back and forth. And this guy, every time he'd get subbed out on the bench, we'd have like halftime or something. During the playoffs, he wouldn't drink any water. And I was like, dude, drink some water right now. Like, you're going to die. And he wouldn't drink any water. It was because he was fasting. It was Ramadan.
Oh.
It still is Ramadan right now as we're recording this.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a Muslim tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for those Islamic followers of Ramadan. Basically, you don't eat or drink while the sun is up during the day. So you're fasting the entire day. So, like, he would eat a bunch before the sun would rise and then eat a bunch after the sun would set. But, like, it sucked because, you know, you go to these basketball games and the sun is still up when you go in. And so, or even on the bench when you're sitting there, you can't, like, drink water and recover midway through. So, crazy thing that he did. We actually
That's
did win the
tough.
championship that year.
Oh,
still.
let's go.
So, despite that, shout out my boy Uzair.
Yeah.
Uzair was able to lift us up and help
Let's
us win
go,
the
Uzair.
championship that year. But I feel very lucky because Uzair was one of my best friends my whole life. Still is one of my best friends. Like, I go visit him every time I go back to Virginia. Really, really tight with that guy. But I feel lucky because I got exposure to the Islamic religion. Like, at a very, very young age. We became friends in second grade. So I was 8 years old when I met this guy. And it was really cool, actually, because a lot of I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so I'm Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the values of my religion are similar to the values that he had in his religion. Like, for example, they're not supposed to drink alcohol, or they're supposed to not have sex before marriage. And both of those things are not common, at least where we grew up in our school. And so his mom was always really comfortable sending him to hang out with me no matter where it was because we had similar values like that. So I was really, really grateful for that kind of exposure. And then it was also cool that we could be friends like that and keep our values in that way.
Yeah.
So, but for a lot of people, I understand that Islam is not something you have, it's not like common knowledge, I guess, in the United States of America.
Yeah, especially if you grow up in certain places, you'll never run into it. People grew up on the West Coast, it's a lot more common.
Yeah.
Or on the East Coast too as well, I guess, either the coasts.
Yeah.
But if you're a Midwesterner,
not a lot of Muslims around.
Good luck, buddy, as they would say in the Midwest.
So we're just going to start with a brief history of what Islam is, and hopefully it can dispel some of the common misconceptions that are out there about Islam. Because, I mean, and everything we talk about there today especially, there's going to be a lot of people out there love to skew it a lot of ways. So we're just going to try to do our best to give all the historical facts.
Yep.
And we'll even provide the best way to do this is to provide a lot of primary sources. So we're going to even read some primary sources just to make sure we try to make sure it's objective.
Yep.
And so you just are learning the facts. But Islam started around the year 600 because the Prophet, well, I'll back you up even further. There's a big city called Mecca in Saudi Arabia. You heard of this place?
I've heard of it.
Still around today, actually.
No, people will be going. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, they have a Mecca there? It's like, that was like a robot to me. I was like, that's sick. That's like a cool religion. And then I found out what it actually was. I was a little disappointed, I'll be honest, but it's still cool.
So Mecca is a big city in Saudi Arabia today. And back around 600 AD, Arabia was a mix of religions with some Nestorian Christians and some polytheists, which means you believe in lots of gods.
Right.
And Mecca was home to a big worship center where they all worshipped lots of gods there. The center of their worship was a big black cube that supposedly had a stone that was given to Adam and Eve a long time ago. Or actually, this stone wouldn't be put in there till much later. But anyway, big black cube later on to have a stone of Adam and Eve. But
okay.
And
kinda
what
like
you would do,
Ark of the Covenant type of deal almost.
Yeah, but at this time it's a polytheistic center for worship.
Okay.
So all these people would go around this box and they worship it. This box is called the Kaaba. And if you haven't seen it, you should look up a picture of it. It's huge. It's massive.
Yeah.
Many, many stories tall.
You're like, I didn't know they made them that big. When you see it, that's what you'll think.
Yeah, then it is really big. And so there was a family, and the father was kind of in charge of this worship center. The son one day goes up onto a high mountain. His name's Muhammad. This is the Muhammad that Muslims will talk about. He goes onto a mountain one day and he receives a vision from the angel Gabriel.
Oh.
And it's a vision given to him. Basically, Gabriel's telling him what God said. And God is saying, you need to go back down to the Kaaba, the box where everyone worships their gods, and tell them, your gods aren't true. And so Muhammad goes down and does what God tells him to do.
Yeah, tough job.
The hard part about this, though, is it's like your dad is the leader of the worship service. So it's like crazy for those people. And so he was not received very well. He's kicked out of the city Mecca and he goes to a nearby city called Medina. And he starts preaching his same message there and gains a lot of followers, actually. And so that's where the religion of Islam starts.
Interesting.
And so his journey from Mecca to Medina is called a pilgrimage. And so many Muslims will take a similar journeying from wherever they are at their home to Mecca, however often they can, to kind of follow in Muhammad's footsteps and make that same journey. And so that's the basis of just how Islam began. If we get into more of the doctrines, Muhammad is the last prophet, according to Islam. Okay. So there's many prophets throughout time, one of which is actually Jesus Christ. So a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think Islamic people don't like Jesus Christ. They actually revere him as one of the greatest prophets. But they do not believe that he is like a saving figure.
Interesting.
Like a savior, like Christians would believe. There's a bunch of different, in Islam you have this book called the Quran, which is supposedly all of Muhammad's sayings. It wasn't actually written until after his death, which makes it very controversial throughout history of what did Muhammad actually say? Right. And did people just rewrite stuff later that he didn't actually say? And so there's a lot of controversy there, but their holy book is called the Quran. And they have 5 doctrines or 5 pillars of Islam, they call it. Right. And these pillars are faith, so faith in God. Or sometimes Muslims will call it Allah, but Allah just means God. Right. So the one God, just like Christians believe in, just like Jews believe in, they believe in one God. Faith in the one God is one pillar. Prayer. So they pray a certain amount of times a day. Alms, which is like tithing. Fasting, like Ramadan. And then pilgrimage. So you follow in Muhammad's footsteps and go to Mecca. So those are just the very, very basic tenets of Islam. And one thing they really want you to know is they claim that they are the most and sometimes the only monotheistic religion. So they would even look at Christians and say, y'all are polytheistic because you believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And that's three to them. And to them, there's just one God.
Right.
Just Allah. They also believe in extreme, like God has ultimate power. So a Christian might say, I'm grateful that Jesus died for me so that I can be forgiven of my sins. And a Muslim would say, well, why do you need someone to die for you for a God to forgive you of your sins? Why can't he just forgive you? Because he wants to.
Right.
Right. So just a different way to look at things. But those are the basic tenets of Islam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. What do you think people might have questions about based on that explanation? Because I just want to make sure I have a firm basis before we move on to more complex topics.
I think you covered pretty much the basics of what you need to know to understand what we're going to cover next.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, what we're going to cover next is kind of a complicated topic. And sorry it's just so much of me talking and you don't get any of Blake's comic relief.
You should, I'm not at liberty to make jokes about a lot of these things.
But what we're going to cover next is just the relationship between Israel and Palestine. I know this is a very complex topic today, especially in just the theater that we're at and the place that we are in time. So I'm just going to try to read a lot of the basic facts so you can get an understanding of this. And then we're going to move on and get to cover some more lighthearted, fun things.
Yeah.
that go on. But if you remember, according to the Bible, around 1900 BC, Abraham enters a land called Canaan. And this land of Canaan is already inhabited by people called Canaanites. This is the land that's later going to be called Israel or Palestine. So this is kind of the first recorded history we have of this. Later on, there will be Moses, who, according to the Bible, leaves this area around 1300 BC. Okay, so they're not technically called. I mean, by the time of Moses, some of them are called the Jewish people, but they're at least the covenant people of the Lord, according to the Bible. You're going to have the kingdom of David established around 1000 BC, and Jerusalem becomes the capital around that time of this Israelite kingdom. Eventually, there's two different tribes of Israel, and they split apart, or not two different tribes, two different sects. The northern one includes 10 tribes, and the southern one includes 2 tribes. And the 2 tribes at the bottom are Judah and Benjamin. And Judah is the biggest tribe, and so that's why the people are called the Jews, because they're of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
Right.
You may notice there's a little, for those who missed it, there's a little similarity.
Yeah, right there.
Judah, Jews, if you get it now. Jewish.
And so if you talk about the Jewish people, that's mostly just the tribe of Judah and maybe the tribe of Benjamin as well, and maybe a little bit of the tribe of Levi. But if you talk about the Israelites, that's everybody as a whole. Okay. An important event happens around 721 BC. Assyria goes in and conquers the northern kingdom of Israel. And instead of just conquering them, the Assyrians are very brutal. And so what they do is they gather all the people together, send them back to Assyria, and then reshuffle Assyrians in. And so these people that are left over from the 10 tribes of Israel will marry with the new Assyrians and other races that the Assyrians have shuffled in and create like a semi-Jewish population. And those people are called the Samaritans. So if you know about like the Good Samaritan from the Bible, he's going to be part Jewish or part Israelite and then part something else. Right.
Which and to them,
right. No good.
Yep. Don't mix like that.
And so but amazingly, in one of the greatest miracles of history, Jerusalem does not fall to the Assyrian raid. And so the southern kingdom of Israel stays intact for a little bit longer until around 586 when the Babylonians come in and kick the Jews out. Cyrus the Great in 515 allows the Jews to go back to Israel. And so you can see there's just people getting moved around all the time. People are just getting shuffled. And you don't need to remember all these dates, but I just want to set the stage for you so you understand that people are moving in and out. Groups of people have been there for a long time. Other groups of people have been there for different amounts of time. Like we totally skipped over even the sea peoples who come in and raid, who may be called the Peliset, and then the Philistines and the Palestinians, who we talked about in an earlier episode. But then around 63 BC, this is when this area really comes into the common light in history, and we have a lot of sources that can corroborate what's going on. In 63 BC, the Romans conquer this area, and they call it Judea. Then in 70 AD, as response to some uprisings, they destroy the temple and destroy, lay waste to Jerusalem, which is why a lot of the Christians and Jews after this point see the Romans as kind of bad people. Yeah. And also in response to that, to kind of say, hey, you don't own this place, we own it, they named the area Syria Palestinia, which is like, if you remember, the Palestinians are kind of like the Jewish people's arch rivals, because when the Sea People came in, some of which were eventually called the Palestinians, they came in and just tried to attack Israel as much as they could.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a attack on their identity for the Romans to be like, hey, we're going to call this place Palestine. It's kind of like a frick you move.
Okay. Pretty measured response, it seems like, from Rome.
The Romans are basically like, hey, this is not your land. We're not calling it Judea. We're calling it Syria Palestinia.
Okay. Very cool.
And so then we get back to where we're at after after Islam begins. The Islamic people conquer it in 636 AD. And for the next period of time, there's going to be a lot of crusades, a lot of fights over the Holy Land, because as you might be able to understand now, the Jerusalem is a holy site to Jews, obviously, holy site to Christians, because it's around where Jesus was born and where he does much of his ministry, and then where he dies, and then also holy to Islamic people, because Jesus is also holy to them, right? He's a prophet. So these three religions see Jerusalem as a very, very important area. Lots of different, after the Islamics conquer it, it's never going to be relinquished from Muslim control up until after the decline of the Ottoman Empire, where Britain takes it over. So Britain's going to hold it after World War I up to World War II.
Which, if you didn't know, you can point at pretty much any location on the map, and at some point, England probably owned it.
Right. Yep. In 1947, when all of a sudden imperialism isn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, it's time to get out of it.
Okay, our bad, guys.
They get out. And Britain just leaves. And the UN is in charge of the area for a little while. They create a plan of how they're going to divide up the land. The Arabs don't like the plan. The Arabs are just the people living in Saudi Arabia that have migrated up into the Levant, that area. So there's a bunch of violence over it, and eventually the state of Israel is created with a prime minister. And there's lots of, I don't want to go too in depth into the fighting that's happened since, but the things you need to know, any book that has any historical credence about this will talk about the three ends. Let me find them on here because I wrote them down. The three ends are no peace, no recognition, no negotiations. This is the result that comes out of the Arab League summit. So basically, all these different countries are trying to negotiate like a land deal where like Israel can be there and Palestine can be there at the same time, so the Jews and the Muslims can live in peace. The UN offers lots of different two-state solutions, which is what it's called, to have both those states there at the same time. Palestine and the other Arab nations get together, and that's what they decide. They decide no peace, no recognition, no negotiations. And so every deal of Israel or the UN that's offered like two-state solutions or peace, the United Arab Nations Pact was to reject those offers. And so that's like the biggest, I would say, fact that you need to know about this conflict, and that's one of the reasons that it's still going on today. And there's lots of bad that's happening on both sides, and I think everybody on both sides, I would say the average person, the average Israeli and the average Palestinian just wants to live a good life, just wants to go home to their family, and just wants to
most people don't want to live in a place where you get bombed every day.
Right. The last act, the last thing that I do want to talk about is the law that Palestine has about whether or not Israelis can live in their borders. So here's a quote from the Israel Declaration of Independence. It says, "We appeal in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months to be the Arab inhabitants of the state of Israel, to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions," which basically means that they are willing to accept Arabs or Palestinians living in their borders. And currently, as it is, unfortunately, Israelis are not allowed to live in Palestinian borders. So just the state of how it is now, 20% of the inhabitants of Israel are Arab, and there are Arabs on the Israeli Supreme Court. They do have Arabs in their elections, and the Jews have given control of the Temple Mount to the Arabs, and then over in Palestine, there are no Jews allowed to live in their territory. So
interesting.
Those are just the facts. Tried to be as least controversial as possible. As you can see, most of this I'm just literally reading off slides that were put together by people that are way smarter than I am. But anyway, now that you have that basis, we're gonna get into some more exciting, fun stuff.
Yay.
Does all that make sense? Hopefully that
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's
checks out.
pretty much how it's going.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the split of Islam then.
All
so
right.
it splits into 3 different sects.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just like any other religion ever does. And they're called Sunni, Sufi, and Shia.
Mm-hmm.
And so after Muhammad dies, there is supposed to be no more prophets because he's the last prophet.
Right.
And so they have to find a new person to lead them, but they're not going to be a prophet.
Mm.
And there's 2 different competing people that want to be the new leader.
Right.
One is his cousin. His name is Ali.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is his father-in-law named Abu Bakr.
Mm.
Okay? And so because of this division...
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Ali is the name that Aladdin takes on when he becomes a prince in Aladdin. He becomes Prince Ali. And then his monkey's name is Abu.
Oh, what the...
Disney, what did you mean by that?
Are they trying to take a side or something?
I don't know, dude.
One
That's
person's
crazy.
presented as a monkey, the other is presented as the prince.
I just made that connection. I don't know if that's, maybe I'm getting the names wrong.
I've never made that connection. No, that's totally right, dude. Prince Ali.
All right. Well, today we uncovered Disney's plot. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, so the Sunni, which is the majority, decides that Muhammad's father-in-law, Abu Bakr, should be the new leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then the minority, which is Shia, believes that Ali, who's Muhammad's cousin and also son-in-law.
Mm.
So funny how that works out. Should be
You do the
new-
math.
But because they don't have a prophet anymore, they have what's called a caliph,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like a stand-in, like a steward.
Okay.
If you've seen Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
it's like the steward of Gondor instead of the king.
Oh, okay.
So he's just kind of in charge because there's no more prophets to be in charge.
Right. Okay.
And everywhere that the caliph... Oh, I forgot to talk about the Sufi. For some reason, the book that this class that we're doing the podcast for is based off of just like disregards them. It doesn't talk about them, but they are a minority of the population. But they believe that you can just have a connection with Allah on your own. You don't need a guide to be in charge of you. So...
Okay. So they're kind of like the more independent party.
Yeah,
More-
I mean, like you could say like evangelical Christians. That's the similarity,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they don't have like a prophet or a leader,
Mhm.
right? Is where like Catholics do.
Okay. Yeah. Just like go to whatever
Mhm.
mega church is near you.
It's the mega church sect.
Yeah.
But whatever the caliph rules over is called a caliphate.
Mm-hmm.
So you could call it an empire as well, but they just call it a caliphate because the caliph's ruling it.
Okay.
Caliph is one of those other words where like I'm saying it a lot, but you should definitely like look at it so you know what it looks like.
Know how that's spelled.
But there's going to be a bunch of different Islamic caliphates, and I'm just going to run through them really quick. You start off with the Rashidun Caliphate around 600 AD.
Mhm.
Then you get the Umayyad Caliphate, then the Abbasid Caliphate, and then the Ottoman Caliphate.
Okay.
The Ottoman Caliphate actually lasts up until World War One.
Oh.
So
Wow.
for a long while,
Yeah.
they're hanging
They were
around.
going good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Welcome to Query Corner, everyone. Today,
You look
I'm
more excited, man.
going to be looking at the roof for this query corner. Today we'll be querying only one corner.
Okay. Which one?
Which one? My question is this, because this is something that's always fascinated me, and I just feel like you may know more about it. than
Okay.
me. So our question doesn't come from the internet today.
Okay.
But obviously I have Catholic friends.
Obviously.
I've been in Catholic churches.
Okay.
I haven't. My family has been to Europe without me. Visited a lot of
Dude,
those places.
I've been there. I know how it feels. Literally, I complain about this all the time. But let me complain to all the viewers about this really quick. 'Cause, within 3 months of me leaving on my 2-year mission,
Mm-hmm.
my family bought a hot tub. My grandparents bought a beach house.
Yep.
And my entire family went to Belize for Christmas.
Let's go.
So
What better time to do it, right?
what better? Dude, I guess that was expensive.
Anyway, so my question is about all this stuff. Like, essentially, I don't know how to phrase this question exactly, but what is the deal with Catholic paintings, man? Because you see a Catholic painting or a statue or a figurine or a candle, and you're like, that's Catholic.
Uh-huh.
You see it, and you're like, okay, that's Catholic. You know, what's the deal with that?
That's a good question. There's just a style of art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not necessarily an art historian.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was. Art history seems like a cool class. One of my friends, actually Blake's girlfriend, one time was taking this art history class, and she was like, "Can you help me study this stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so like half of it I just nailed down because I know the history, and the other half I was like, "Man, I have no idea."
Oh, didn't they start covering art history in one of your classes once and you almost fell asleep?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out like that.
That's true. That's true. There's this Greek history class, which like it's half Greek history and half like Greek tragedy and like art and stuff. And dude, like when we're talking about like Pisistratus, or we're talking about like Socrates, or we're talking about Alexander the Great, like dude, I'm on the edge of my seat. We're talking about like, here's this Greek tragedy, or here's a style of pottery. Dude, it's like the Lego movie. When you say Alexander the Great, I go. When you say Greek pottery, I go.
One of the best jokes from the Lego movie, if you haven't seen it.
So good. Watch the Lego movie after you listen to this. But let me answer the question for real though. At least this is what I do know about it. If you ever notice behind Catholic paintings, behind the important people in Catholic paintings, like Jesus or Mary or Saint Francis, any of these important people in Catholic theology, there's going to be like a yellow or gold circle behind their head. That is
now that you say that, it is a defining characteristic where you're like, that's a Catholic painting.
You just know.
Yeah.
Or Constantine. You look behind a picture of Constantine.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I never thought of it before, but that is like that's something you notice.
Yep. Usually saints have that behind their head, and that's called a halo. So you always think of a halo like a golden ring above a little angel.
Right.
Like Cupid or something.
Yeah.
But originally the halos were that. And actually it comes from something even earlier. In ancient Mesopotamia, which is basically the Middle East. In ancient Mesopotamia, they started this practice of drawing like halos around their important gods. Same as the Catholics. So it's just kind of a thing that was, and this is basically what everything is. No one ever really invents anything new. People just copy each other.
Yeah.
In history. And I don't know why we have such a problem with people copying each other, really. It's just like everyone's been doing it throughout all history. That's how you make better things. If you copy what someone else did and you said, now I'm going to add this to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this thing had been going on for a long time in Mesopotamia, and then the Catholics were like, let's use that, but for our religion. And it became a Catholic thing. So.
Dang. That's sick. But in terms of just the art in general, it's just that Europeans have such a relationship with art that like that's the best way to express their devotion, would you say?
I would say that I'm not the person to answer that question.
Okay, sick.
But that, from my observation, that would make sense to me.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Well, that's sick. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the Query Corner today. I'm literally sending a text right now while I'm closing this. And I care about all of you.
So we're going to start off with the Abbas or the Rashidun Caliphate, which is the earliest one.
Okay.
So comes the OGs, and they begin the raids around the area. So they start in Saudi Arabia, Mecca, Medina, and they start raiding all around. So they start the conquests.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you do, as a denomination of a religion.
That's the main thing that goes on, as you'll see when we talk about the Crusades here in a second. After the Rashidun, you're going to get the Umayyad Caliphate.
Okay.
And then you're going to get the Abbasid Caliphate. We're just going to breeze over those really quick. But during the Abbasid Caliphate, their power is going to be significantly decreased because the Mongols, a fearsome people.
Those dang guys, dude. They always come in at some point.
Are going to sack Baghdad.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the center for learning. Because, I mean, during this era, it's called the Dark Ages for the rest of the world because Rome has fallen and the Western world is very, very technologically backwards. However, the Muslims are doing great. They're over there doing their own thing. Okay. You know who else is doing great?
Because they got Baghdad.
Yeah, they got Baghdad. All the wisdom in the Baghdad House of Wisdom.
Oh, dude, you already know what's in there.
And so they're doing all right until the Mongols come and rape and pillage and sack.
You ever notice that? Hey, history fans, you ever notice how every time there's a civilization that's doing good, the Mongols come and sack it?
We're gonna talk about the Mongols a lot later. I wish we got to tell this in chronological order because then like this would just mean so much more to you. Right now, you're like, man, that sucks.
I guess these guys, the Mongols, came in, huh?
They just did that again. Yeah, it's kind of like you get like 10 sneak peeks of them just doing stuff.
Yeah, because like
you
every civilization we cover has been like, oh yeah, and then they end because the Mongols came through.
We're gonna talk lots more about the Mongols even in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future of this podcast. But the Mongols also are going to. The Mongols are a steppe people. Do you remember what I mean when I say steppe people?
Yeah, they lived on the Eurasian steppe.
Lived on the Eurasian steppe, and there's a lot of people who live on the Eurasian steppe because it's big.
Mm-hmm.
Mongolia is known as the womb of nations because there just keeps being nations that be coming out of Mongolia, and the Mongols are one of them. And so every time a nation gets born in Mongolia, it'll like rule for a little while, and then a new nation will get born, and then like kick that nation a little bit to the west. And then a new nation will get born in Mongolia and kick the first nation even further to the west. It's this like dominoes. They just keep getting kicked further and further and further west.
And you would think they don't need to be kicked out, because if I lived in Mongolia, I'd be like, all right, I'll leave.
I didn't want to be here anyway.
It's fine. Like, I'll leave, dude. Like, dude, let me pull up the weather in Mongolia for you right now. Currently.
Which sucks.
I remember I looked at the weather in Ulaanbaatar one time, and it was literally like negative 17 degrees in the middle of summer. Yeah, right now it's like 27 degrees.
Okay, yeah. So I would leave.
It's the high today.
Especially with no like heating.
Yeah.
Or AC or anything like that.
No, it sucks there, dude.
But there's a steppe people that breed with the people in... breed is not the word I should probably use for that. I guess marry with the people in Turkey. And they created people called the Turks, as you might be able to guess.
Yes.
And these Turks at this time are called the Seljuk Turks.
Okay.
The Seljuk Turks are going to rise to power in these Islamic dynasties and going to start ruling. They're going to convert to Islam as well.
Okay.
And they're going to start ruling the Islamic caliphates. So Seljuk Turks, just keep that in your mind. These are also going to be the main people who are fighting against the Christians in the Crusades in the future. Because we're going to leave the Middle East in that area for a second, just with the Seljuk Turks in charge of the Islamic caliphates. And we're going to head over to Egypt for a sec.
Okay.
Now let's chat about Egypt.
Okay, yeah.
There's a word in the Arabic language called mamluk. This word means to own or to be owned. Okay. This is their word for slave.
Oh.
And there's a bunch of slave warriors called mamluks in Egypt because these caliphates, these Islamic caliphates, have conquered Egypt. Now these mamluks, who are the slave warriors, rise up in revolt and make their own state. So it's called Mamluk Egypt at the time, and it's just literally a military government run by these slaves.
Oh, okay.
And they control Egypt. They control a little bit of Syria, but they actually fall pretty fast because they start trading with everyone. They're like, now we're our own state, we can start trading. Bad news. As soon as they start trading, also coincidentally, it's when the Black Death is coming around. So maybe they should have just kept it themselves.
Nice try, buddy.
I don't know what's worse, being enslaved or having the Black Death.
Dude.
They were kind of dealing with it.
There's a discussion question for today. Put down in the comments.
Tell us any evidence you have. Either way. We're going to head over to Europe now and talk about what's going on there. Last we checked Europe, Rome had just fallen. It was 476. So now we just have the Eastern Roman Empire that's still cooking.
Because they never stopped.
They never stopped until, they never stopped.
Which is also known as...
Byzantium.
They're
the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah.
Okay, their capital is in an old Greek city. They used to be called Byzantium, now renamed Constantinople. Okay.
After Constantine.
Very, very hard to conquer because it's really the only like bridge you have between Europe and Asia. The only way you can get through. Otherwise, you'd have to go really, really far south and then sail, or you'd have to go north and go through the Caucasus Mountains and then to Russia, which no one wants to do ever.
Right.
Just in general.
Not fun.
And so it's a really, really important point, but also hard to conquer because it's hard to get there. It's hard to lay siege to this place. And so the Byzantine Empire is doing all right, but they are fighting against this new Persian Empire that has risen. They're called the Sassanid Persians. They're not even close to as powerful as the old Persians we talked about.
Right.
But the Eastern Roman Empire is not as strong as the old Romans we talked about either.
Okay.
So they're kind of evenly matched.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're fighting for a long time. No one really wins, but they fight each other to exhaustion, which is perfect timing for the Muslims to come in and just conquer everything. It's kind of like if you and your homie are fighting, and then after like an hour, there's a brand new dude that shows up. And the new dude is like John Cena. So they come in and they take over all of the Sassanid Persian Empire and then start shrinking Byzantium.
Okay.
Start shrinking the Eastern Roman Empire. And the Romans there are very, very worried about it.
Yeah.
And so they call the Pope and ask for help
Hmm.
in defense. But them and the Pope are not on great terms right now because of something called the iconoclasm.
Mm.
Do you know what the iconoclasm is?
It wasn't great for the church.
Yeah, so what's going on now is there is a dispute within the Christian church, which is the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, all of Christianity is just Catholic, and there's a dispute over one of the 10 commandments.
Mm.
And this commandment is whether or not it's okay to... the commandment is, thou shalt not have graven images.
Mm-hmm.
The dispute is over what really qualifies as a graven image.
Right.
So if you know anything about the Catholic Church, they've got a lot of saints.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of... every Catholic church you walk into... I remember when I walked into a Catholic church for the first time. Love my Catholic brothers. But I walked in and I saw just like this dead Jesus hanging from the
yeah.
the thing. And I was like, whoa.
They have those.
They've got those. Or they've got statues of saints or things like that, which are really, really cool. But a lot of the church, especially in the Far East, thought that was disobeying the commandment to not have any graven images.
Mm-hmm.
And so they fight about it for a long time. Eventually, it results in something called the iconoclasm, which is the destruction of all of the just like images and saints and statues and even stained glass
Mm-hmm.
of these Eastern churches that believed that having those images and saints was against the commandment of thou shalt not have any graven images.
Right.
And so this causes a split between, you're going to have Western Catholicism,
Mm-hmm.
which exists in most of Western Europe,
Right.
and you're going to have Eastern Orthodoxy or Greek Orthodoxy or whatever you want to call it in the East, over by the Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantium. Mm-hmm. And the Western Roman Empire, which is, you should just associate these things with each other now. The Western part of Europe, which used to be the Western Roman Empire, you should associate with Western Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
The Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire, you should associate with Eastern Orthodoxy.
Mm-hmm.
So the Western side, the Catholic Church, has a pope to lead
Mm-hmm.
them. Because the pope is not really part of the Eastern Church anymore, they got to get their own pope.
Right.
But they don't want to call it pope.
Mm.
So they call it something else. They call him the patriarch.
Mm. New name.
New name. Same deal. Yeah, new name. And he lives in Constantinople.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is why they're not on great terms. So then when they're threatened by the Islamic invaders, the
Mhm.
Seljuk Turks,
Mhm.
who he left in charge, they call the Pope, but they're a little nervous to call the Pope.
Right.
Because they're like, and obviously they're not talking on the phone, but they call
Yeah.
the Pope. And they're like, hey, we need your help. And this is the ticket they used to convince him. Here's the golden ticket strategy if you ever want to convince the Pope to help you in the Crusades.
Good sales techniques about to come
Okay.
up here.
He says, help us defend, and don't you also want to take back the Holy Land?
Dude, don't tempt the Pope with taking back the Holy Land.
The Pope's like, yes, I actually do want to do that.
Obviously.
And so the Pope starts to gather together a huge army.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about why he's able to gather together that army probably next week.
Mm-hmm.
But a bunch of the different states in Europe are very loyal to him because of some slimy, that's not the right word. Maybe I shouldn't use that. Some networking he's done.
Yeah.
And
He's
so
worked some connections.
He's worked some connections. So he's able to muster an army, starts calling them in, and they're going to go help the Eastern Orthodox Christians defend against this Islamic threat.
There you go.
And so as they're gathering, he calls for some specifically from the Christian kingdoms of Kiev,
Mm-hmm.
which Kiev is the capital of Ukraine, so you kind of know where that area is.
Yeah.
The kingdom of Armenia,
Mm-hmm.
the kingdom of Georgia. He's calling for Christian crusaders. And so these countries start gathering together their armies as big as they can possibly get them. And they have assembled the biggest armies these countries will ever have in the history of their armies, up until modern day. And just as they're about to send these armies to the Pope, they see on the horizon probably 15 to 20,000 horsemen, all armed with bows and arrows. Okay, these are the Mongols making another appearance.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people always ask me, I know the Mongols crush China. They crush this area. How do you think they would do against European knights
Mm-hmm.
or crusaders?
Mm-hmm.
So here you don't have to wonder that. You can just watch it.
Oh, okay.
This is
Check
what
this
happens.
out.
The Mongols absolutely slaughter them.
Oh.
And it's not even really close.
Oh, oops.
And the kings of all these areas send these letters to the Pope, which actually shout at them for putting this brave of a face on, to be yeah. Because what the Mongols do is they go and they raid and they pillage and they destroy all these areas. They conquer all of Russia basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then their great Khan, their leader, dies, and so they have to retreat. But the European Christians don't know that. All they know is like they literally just wiped out all of our army, conquered Russia, and then just left. And so the kings of these areas send like letters to the Pope being like, hey, we can't provide you with like all the crusaders we wanted to, but like don't worry, like we beat this foe and sent him like running away. And
the only reason they're spared is that their leader died.
Yep. But shout out to these kings, like putting on a brave face though.
Yeah, man.
Good for them.
Listen, we'll get you what you need.
But unfortunately, this Christian crusading army the Pope wanted is not as big as the army that he had planned on, or the army that he gets. So he gets this army, and he sends it over in a bunch of different crusades, and in every single one of the crusades, they're unsuccessful. So by the fourth crusade, these crusaders are getting a little tired of crusading.
Yeah.
And so they walk in, they start...
It's an activity you can do a couple times.
You can do like 3 times before you get exhausted.
And then you're kind of like, yeah.
It's like when my family goes to the lagoon and they show up at like 8 a.m. and like, I'm down to ride the rides until like 3 p.m. That's a long time for me to ride the rides. But
you've hit all the rides.
I can't ride until like 9.
No.
At night, I'm ready to go home and get in the hot tub or something.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Crusaders, I think.
Same thing. It's similar to Lagoon if you've ever been.
They're on the way to take back the Holy Land. And if you notice, the only land bridge, or the only bridge between Europe and Asia is Constantinople. They're walking through Constantinople and they say, you know what, this place is pretty nice. Why don't we just pillage and raid and rape it as well?
Oh.
And so they do.
Oh.
Now, why is that weird?
Well, it's kind of weird because Constantinople was the one who called the
Yeah.
Pope, and he's like, hey, let's get a crusading party.
They're kind of on the same side in the first place.
And then that same crusading party kind of just goes rogue, and they're like, oh, check these guys out.
So that's what's super weird. They conquer Constantinople. Well, I don't know if conquer is even the right word. But they go in and they raid it and stuff. And obviously the Pope is not a fan of this. Like, this is something they do of their own accord. No Pope or no patriarch is ordering them to do this kind of thing. Yeah. But point being, every single crusade failed in its job.
Dang.
But the Venetians did get some sweet trade deals out of it.
Oh, okay. There you
so if that matters to you.
Hey, man, I'm excited about it now.
That's one of the problems, I think, with like modern day historians is, which I am also one, so shout out. But is that they kind of like look at that and like, man, all these crusades happened, like tons of people died and tortured, but like also was that bad because we got trade deals going on. Dude, are you serious? Well, you should ask the families of those people.
No, I think trade deals are great. I'm a big fan of trade deals.
So you would think it was worth it?
Yeah, we got trade deals. What more could you want out of life?
Right.
A good trade deal.
Good trade deals for the Venetians, and then they can make a city that just has canals instead of streets.
Yeah.
So
they called it Venice.
They called it Venice. Yep. That's why they're called Venetians.
Yes.
Because they're from Venice.
Yeah.
I think we hit all the major points. Sorry, there was a lot of information we had going on here, but hopefully it makes sense to you. Well, we'll do a quick review, like we always do at the end of the things. But it's tricky when you're doing this period of history because there's like 10 things going on all the different continents that all affect each other. So we just kind of have one puzzle piece, and then next week we'll put in what's going on in Europe, why the Pope can get so many crusaders, all the trade deals he's got going on, because we're all about the trade deals now.
He is a networker. You can't dismiss this guy for his networking skills.
And then the next week we'll go ahead and throw in the Mongols and say, oh, like, how are they so powerful? Right. Why did they just show up like that? Why did one dude dying mean they all have to go back?
Yeah. Why are they so cool?
Yep. All that we'll be covering soon. So, but let's do a brief review of everything just so we can look at the overarching theme. We'll start with Islam. Islam is a monotheistic religion. They believe in one God, or Allah. The founding prophet is Muhammad. His father is in charge of the Kaaba, which is the cube where you worship your gods.
Yep.
Goes to the Kaaba, says all your gods are fake. People kick him out. Goes to Medina. It's called a pilgrimage, right? Muslims have 5 pillars. Pilgrimage is one of them. You don't need to know all the pillars, but faith, fasting, prayer, alms, pilgrimage. And then I would say that's pretty much all you need to know. They're monotheistic. They believe in most of the same things. They believe in the Christian Old Testament. Most of the Christian values, other than Jesus Christ being a savior. Instead, he's just a prophet.
Right.
So, the history in terms of the Arabs they were able to take down the Sassanid Persians because the Romans and the Sassanid Persians were fighting for a long time. Right? They both get tired. and then the Arabs can come in and take them over. Then you've got the iconoclasm in Europe, which is what? You want to fill in on this one?
Iconoclasm. No, also maybe is like the Great Schism. So when the church separates into two, you get the Eastern Orthodox over in the Constantinople side, and then you get the traditional Catholics, Western Roman Catholics, over on the Roman side.
Good. But although that happens, the Patriarch of Constantinople, under threat from Muslim invasion, is still able to call the Pope, say, hey, we need crusaders. Sends them, not as many as he wanted, but sends them. And so every crusade fails in conquering the Holy Land. Except the Fourth Crusade fails even worse because they try to conquer Constantinople.
It's actually a self-burn there on accident.
So there you have it. There's your information.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning into the Dorm History Podcast. No sponsor this week.
We're hoping to get one next
Someday
week,
maybe we'll have a sponsor.
if you have a product, pay us $1.
Pay us $1.
Put your thing on there.
We let them know about it.
Buy me an orange Fanta. Dude, this week earlier, I tried 3 different vending machines to get an orange Fanta out of, and every single one fell to the bottom of the thing. And I have pictures of them on my phone.
That's so funny.
So buy me an orange Fanta and you can be our sponsor.
This week's episode is sponsored by, well, it could be if they would pay us, sponsored by this phone. But I'm not going to tell you what kind of phone it is.
Ooh.
But if only they would pay us, you'd know what kind of phone.
That's a hint to the company that's watching.
Anyway, we're going to sign off now. So
peace out.